Let's talk some chess. So we have the final game of the World Chess Championship. We talked about last time how after 14 games the match was completely tied, so they headed to the tiebreak, which is 4 games at 25 minutes or so apiece, with some added increment per move. If it's tied after those 4 games, then they will go to a blitz game, where it's just 5 minutes for each player plus 1 or 2 seconds for each move. But in the 4th game here, we actually had a decisive result. We had a winner. We have crowned a new world chess champion. So let's talk about it. Let's get right into it. Jan has the white pieces. Ding Liren has the black pieces, and Jan opens this up with e4. We have e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and now bishop to b5. So the Ruy Lopez, which we've seen a bunch in this match from Jan. Pawn to a6, kicking the bishop away, and the bishop retreats to a4. This is the Morphy defense, which I also think we've seen in this match. Knight to f6 is played, Jan castles kingside, bishop to e7, d3, and now b5, obviously forcing the bishop away from the square. So the bishop retreats to b3, we have d6, and now a4 by Jan, trying to win these squares back for the bishop. Ding brings his own bishop to d7, we have h3, preventing the bishop from coming to g4 and pinning the knight. Ding castles kingside, Jan develops another piece, the bishop to e3, and now Ding brings his knight to a5. This comes in an attack, of course, on the light-squared bishop. Jan wants to keep this light-squared bishop, which is on an excellent diagonal, so he retreats it to a2, and Ding takes the pawn on a4. And it looks like Ding has just won a pawn, but this pawn is going to be very difficult to defend, as we will see, and Jan will be able to win the material back. So Jan starts by playing knight to c3. Now the knight is attacking the pawn. It's defended once by the bishop. Ding brings his rook to b2, so obviously, threatening this semi-open file. We have bishop to b1, and now queen to e8. The queen and the bishop now are defending the pawn, and I should note that this bishop to b1 move also opens up a discovered attack of the rook on the pawn. So now queen to e8, both these pieces are protecting the pawn, but Jan adds another attacker with b3. You obviously can't take back because then the knight is hanging, so Ding just decides to let bygones be bygones and plays c5, and we have Jan taking the pawn with the knight on a4. Ding brings this knight, which was really only here to kind of move the bishop away. It brings the knight from a5 to c6. We have knight to c3 by Jan, who also brings his knight back to the center of the board, and now a5 by Ding. Oops, sorry. Jan then plays knight to d2. He wants to bring his knight to c4, where it will attack this a5 pawn. Bishop to e6 adds a token defense of the c4 square, but Jan puts his knight on c4 anyways, and now you're attacking this pawn, which is defended just once by the knight. Instead of defending it again, Ding just plays d5. We have e takes on d5, knight takes, and now this comes with an attack on the bishop. It actually forks the bishop and the knight, so Jan simultaneously retreats his bishop to d2 and protects his knight on c3. Ding takes it anyways. We have knight takes on c3, bishop takes on c3, and then a couple more trades on c4. And now Jan has the bishop pair. This light-squared bishop is not very good right now, but he does have the bishop pair. And so that, and Ding has 3 of these pawn islands, so this is a slightly better position for white. We have bishop to d8 by Ding, bishop to d2 by Jan. Bishop now reroutes to c6, so a nice little maneuver to get it sort of oriented more towards white's king. And now c3, starting to release this light squared bishop so it can wreak havoc. We have f5 here by Ding, a really expansive move, and rook to e1 by Jan. Always a good idea to put your rook in a semi-open file that's lined up with the enemy queen. Now rook to d7 by Ding, putting some pressure on this d3 pawn, which is only defended once by the light squared bishop. And now rook to a2, a nice little rook lift by Jan. We've seen this move a couple of times in this match. Queen to d6 now, getting the queen into the game, and now Jan does the same with queen to e2. And here queen to d6, now lining up a potential battery of the queen and bishop attacking the king's camp. We have g3, fending off that that potential battery, and now rook d to e8, adding a defender behind this e5 pawn. Queen to f3, now kind of eyeing this knight in case the queen ever moves away, and Ding here plays e4, which is actually the incorrect move. It gives Jan an advantage. You want to play knight to e7 here, and then Jan will just reroute his dark squared bishop to e3 probably, but this is still a pretty even position. But instead, by playing e4, you allow d takes on e4, and now Ding plays knight e5 with an attack on the queen, but the queen is happy to retreat to g2. The knight comes now to d3, attacking the rook, but Jan just trades. We have queen takes, bishop takes, and now Jan takes on f5, and we have a rook trade on e1. The bishop takes back. And now we have queen takes pawn on c4. So now the material is not equal. Jan is up a pawn, although this pawn is obviously threatened. But I think, you'd rather play white here. You have the rook attacking this a5 pawn. You have the queen ready to, jump into the game with check if the black queen ever moves. The bishop is guarding this pawn. White's king looks a little bit safer, so this position is better for white. But here, Jan doesn't really take advantage of his good position. He needs to play rook to d2 here, and this threatens. It gets the rook on an open file, and it threatens to launch sort of a counterattack. For example, if you get bishop to e5, queen to c6, h5, and now the rook comes to d7. And now, this is pretty threatening for white. But instead, Jan plays rook to a1, and now the rook is still stuck on a semi-open file, so it can't really launch a counterattack. And this just allows Ding to take immediately with rook to f5. You couldn't do this if Jan had played d2, because then if you take, you're going to get the immediate queen to c6, and now the rook can come into the game. There's no defense on the 8th rank, and this just wouldn't work for black. So basically, by Jan playing a1, this allows rook takes on f5, and now the material is equal, and the position has equalized as well. We have bishop to d2. Now we have h6 by Ding, and now queen to c6. This obviously comes to an attack on the bishop, so Ding defends it with rook to f7. Rook now to e1, finally getting this rook on an open file and getting ready to attack, and the king just escapes to h7 because obviously otherwise rook to e8 was coming with check. Here, bishop to e3, so abandoning the defense of this c3 pawn in favor of going after this c5 pawn, Ding just adds an attacker to the pawn with bishop to e5. We have queen to e8, attacking the rook, but the rook is defended by the queen, so can't take it, but the bishop can take the pawn on c3, which it does, and now you get rook to c1, which pins the bishop to the queen. Here we have rook to f8. You want it, your bishop and your rook was attacked by the queen. You want to sort of save one of those, or not save, but get one of those out of harm's way, so Ding does with the rook to f6, and now queen to d7. Black queen goes to e2. We have queen to d5 by Jan, and now bishop to b4. Really nice structure here with the two passed pawns and the bishop, just really solid. And now you really have to start worrying if you're playing with the white pieces. You're down a pawn and you have these two passed pawns that are going to be difficult to stop, so you really have to start eyeing it. And I made a note here. Oh yeah, so it looks like you can take the bishop here with the rook, but you can't, because then you get queen to e1 check, forks the king and the rook, and that is no good for white at all. So instead, you have queen to d5, bishop to b4, and now queen to e4 check, so controlling this nice diagonal. Here we have a couple of repeated moves: king to g8, queen to d5, king to h7, queen to e4, and here's where Ding played the really surprising move, and I think the commentators were saying he wasn't going to play this, and he did. He plays rook to g6, and this is a surprising move because it pins the rook to the king, and you have to be careful because you have these pawns that are close by that can really make the rook's life miserable. But the engine doesn't mind this move. The engine says it's still equal and still all good, and it kind of leaves Jan without a move. It's sort of hard to find a good move here. Jan doesn't play a great move. He plays f5, and Ding just continues to march on with these pawns. So now this pawn is getting even closer. It's on c4, and this was where Jan made, unfortunately, the move that really started to tear the position apart. He played h4 here, and what you need to play here is queen to f4, and you need to get the queen off of this diagonal, because now that Ding has the pawn on c4, his own queen can come to d3 and really control this powerful diagonal. But instead, Jan says, okay, I'm pinning the rook, I might as well attack with the pawn, I'm going to play h4, but now you get queen to d3, and now you're in big trouble. You're offering a queen trade, but obviously Jan does not want to take the queen trade because then you get just pawn takes, and now you have these two passed pawns that are going to be difficult to deal with. But because now the queen is on d3, the black queen is on d3, the white queen can no longer pin the rook. So probably sensing some danger here, Jan moves the queen to f3, and Ding just immediately moves the rook away now that it's unpinned to f6 to attack the queen right back. We have queen to g4 by Jan, c3, so now this pawn is getting even closer to promoting. Rook to beat d1, attacking the queen. It's defended by the white queen. The queen retreats now to g6, once again offering a queen trade. Once again, Jan, of course, does not want to trade queens, so he puts the queen on c8, getting behind the passed pawn. But now the rook can just go after the queen. Rook to c6, queen to a8, and now rook to d6. Ding wants to trade all the material off and just have his two passed pawns. Jan actually does trade here. We have rook takes, queen takes, and now the white queen goes to e4 with check. Ding blocks with the queen, again happy to offer a queen trade, and Jan says no, I'll keep my queen and put it on c4. We have black queen to b1 with check. The king retreats to h2, and now the pawns just keep marching on. a4, Jan puts his bishop on d4, now two pieces attacking this pawn, but Ding says I don't care, I'm going to keep pushing my pawn. And it doesn't really work to take here, because after you trade, you're just going to get a2, and now I don't know how you are stopping this pawn from promoting. So you can't take the black pawn. Instead, Jan tries something, anything. He plays queen to c7. This obviously threatens mate. If Ding doesn't do anything about it, of course, Ding just retreats his queen to g6, and now you get Jan maybe trying to repeat queen to c4, but now you just get this c2 move, and the pawn is protected by the queen, so it cannot be taken, and it is now one square away from queening. So Jan defends the queening square with bishop to e3. We have Ding moving his bishop to d6. Kind of ignored that this bishop was just under attack. For example, the bishop is hanging, but obviously Jan cannot take it, because then you just get a promotion here to a queen. But now that Jan's bishop is guarding the queening square, he is threatening to take the bishop, so Ding moves it safely to d6. We have king to g2, trying to improve the position, but now h5, which is just a brutal move. It cuts off any move that white has. So h5, king to f1, bishop to e5, now protecting the second, or the a pawn's queening square. We have g4, Jan just trying anything to get some counterplay. H takes on g4. Now h5, trying really again for anything. And I guess the idea here is that the queen takes, then you can pick up this pawn, but not really, because then the queen can just block. So I don't know what Jan's doing, trying for some craziness, any hopes of a comeback here. But Ding says, no, I'm going to keep my queen on this diagonal. Queen to f5. Jan plays queen to d5, pinning the bishop now to the queen. Ding pushes his other pawn, g3. Jan plays f4. Now this attacks the bishop, which is pinned, so the bishop can't move, right? So that's good. Because obviously if the bishop moves, then you just get queen takes queen, but it doesn't really matter, because you just get this a2 move, happy to give the bishop up, and again, if you take the bishop, then queen takes back. If pawn takes bishop, I'm sorry, the pawn isn't even threatening the bishop, it's pinned by the king. Sorry, it's been a long game. So bishop isn't even really threatened. Instead, Jan just takes the pawn on a2, and then we have bishop takes on f4, and it was in this position that Jan Nepomniachtchi resigned the game, making Ding Liren the world chess champion. And this is just amazing. I mean, there's actually, I think, a mate in like 8 or 9 moves here, because no matter what you play with white, it's just going to be basically impossible to stop this this pawn from queening. So the bishop is obviously under attack. But if you move it from the diagonal, then you just get a queen coming up on c1. If you take the bishop, then you're just you have queen takes on f4 with check. King has to move, and then a queen will come up on the next move. And if you that's basically your only two options. You either move the bishop away or you take. Neither work, and this was just the end of the game. So an awesome match. Thank you so much for tuning in throughout it. Congrats to Ding. Obviously just played amazing and had some great comebacks and some stunning moves with black pieces, which obviously is great to see in the World Chess Championship. Both players playing really great attacking style. So had a great time. Thanks again for watching. Drop a like and subscribe. And I am excited to go back to some less complicated games, because these games are hard to analyze. So I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.